What's good? Thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Newest Olympian. My name is Mike Schubert. I'm the titular Newest Olympian, and I am on a journey to determine if Percy Jackson and the Olympians is a book series that we've all been sleeping on as a society. But I am not on this journey alone. Though I am a 29-year-old man who has never read them before, I am joined by a 29-year-old woman who has never read them before, but now has finished the entire series because she couldn't be bothered to try to wait for the podcast, but I also don't blame her. It's my wife and the love of my life, Kelly Beckman Schubert. Kelly, how's it going?
Good. Hi.
All right. Just a super normal way to start the episode.
Oh, wait, hold on. Was I supposed to say something other than hi?
No, but just the ways. Hi.
Hello.
Good. I'm a human. We are here today to discuss Chapter 21 of Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief. I usually ask guests what their history with the Percy Jackson fandom and book series is. I already know the answer, but for the folks at home that might not know, what's your history with Percy Jackson?
Yeah, my history is really quick. I started reading them about a month ago, maybe 2 months ago. And I just finished reading them like a week ago. I'm now attempting to lap Mike, so I'm rereading one right now.
So you've read the first 5. You've not done any of the spin-off stuff, but we did order the spin-off stuff that I probably won't be reading for another at least 2 years, maybe, at the rate that I'm going. Who's to say? But we did order the books, so we put them on the business credit card and everything because eventually I will have to read them for the podcast, but you are going to reap those benefits much sooner.
Yeah, we made the mistake of I was on book 3 and I was in the very beginning and we didn't have book 4 yet. And I was like, oh, we've got time. And then like a day later, I was like, no, there's no more time. We got to order it right now. And then it didn't get there. Oh, no. It was when I was reading book 4.
Yes, you blitzed through book 4 in about 2 days.
Yeah, I was like, I got like a week until I need to order this. Blitzed through the whole thing, and then we went out of town for 2 weeks, and the book was sitting at our apartment waiting for us to come home.
The problem was I bought a used box set of the paperbacks, and the seller decided to give me 2 of book 2 and 0 of book 5,
And it was
which
devastating.
Is distinctly not what I ordered.
But my sister was a Percy Jackson fan.
Oh, okay.
She read the first 4 when we were growing up. My sister reads so many books that, I mean, she probably told me about it, but she reads so many things that I just was never going to catch up. She never read the 5th one because there was so much time, from what she said, between the 4th and the 5th. So much time passed that she either forgot or just like lost interest. I'm going to encourage her to read it now. And apparently we rented the movies when they came out and watched them because my mom remembers watching the first movie. I don't remember watching the first movie. But that's my short, condensed history of time with Percy Jackson.
Mm-hmm. But you did go from very casually thinking, oh, yeah, these books are okay, to being incredibly obsessed in a very quick amount of time.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you started the podcast well before I started reading them. And I was kind of thinking, yeah, I'll get to it eventually. And then maybe I'll let him get halfway through the series and then I'll start reading so that I can listen along. And then I just got too jealous every time that you would laugh while reading the books. And so I started reading them.
Oh, fantastic. Well, let's start talking about Chapter 21, which does have not necessarily a funky chapter title, but one that is very cool sounding, and it's called I Settle My Tab. I like he's gone full action hero with this one, and the next one, which you will also be discussing with me later. We have left the funny, silly chapter titles behind, and it's all business here in Percy Jackson and the Olympians in the final 2 chapters.
Yep.
So the Los Angeles News is describing Ares as a kidnapper who abducted Percy Jackson and 2 other adolescents in New York and then brought them across the country. The news says that Percy only caused a commotion on the Greyhound bus back in New Jersey because he was trying to escape his captor. The explosion at the Arch is also blamed on Ares as well, well. And then you have a quote from the book. Finally, brave Percy Jackson, and the narrator Percy says, I was beginning to like this kid, had stolen a gun from his captor in Los Angeles and battled him shotgun to rifle on the beach. And it continues saying that 5 cop cars were ruined in an explosion caused by Ares' shooting. There were no casualties, and Percy and his friends are now safe.
And Ares, or rather the kidnapper, is still at large. Which, if I was somebody living in the human realm of the world, would kind of terrify me.
Yes, especially because the things they've described are not calm. We're talking about shotgun battles and exploding cars and dragging people across the country from New York all the way to Los Angeles. That would not be something I would feel comfortable about if I lived in the Santa Monica area. I agree.
Well, if I lived anywhere in the U.S., because this guy randomly kidnapped them and brought them across all of the U.S. in a very violent way. Yeah, the mist is an interesting thing, but I'd be pretty terrified as a human.
Now, Percy decides to enact the ultimate revenge plan when he is put on the news. Choking back tears, he says, all I want is to see my loving stepfather again. Every time I saw him on TV calling me a delinquent punk, I knew somehow we would be okay. And I know he'll want to reward each and every person in this beautiful city of Los Angeles with a free major appliance from his store. Here's the phone number. Incredible. Amazing. You love to see this.
Your reading of that sounded remarkably like the audiobook that I was listening to the second time through the book.
I've listened to absolutely 0 seconds of the audiobook. Alyssa Esteban said that I sounded like the audiobook in a couple instances, and now you've said this as well. Clearly, I'm just subconsciously great at imitations.
I mean, I would say your crying voice was pretty spot on for that guy, but he had a pretty annoying Sally and Gabe voice.
I have heard that some of the other voices are not very pleasurable. I do not know if there are multiple audiobooks, if there's multiple narrators. I'm not putting any besmirching on anyone yet, because I haven't listened to any. So I will save my dunking for a future date.
I would say the audiobook that I've listened to, the guy doing it does a really good job of acting like 12-year-old Percy. And like 12-year-old Percy imitating his stepfather or imitating Ares. Like, they're like annoying in the way that a 12-year-old boy would make Gabe sound annoying.
Sorry, you said Gabe. I don't recognize that character. I only recognize Smelly Gabe.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, just want to make sure. On this podcast, we only refer to him by his full legal name.
I was like, wait, what? Is his name not Gabe?
No, it's not like the time that I called Luke Jake and then had to re-record a couple of different lines because I kept calling Luke Jake. And Sherry, who does the first passive edits on the podcast, she does a wonderful thing where she will put in audio notes when I mess things up because I'll say the wrong name. I've called Percy Poseidon in the past, or I'll mispronounce words, or I'll say words that don't exist. Like in a recent episode, I combined through and from into Throm. And then another time instead of saying wary of, I said weary of. And I was that many days, years old when I learned that there's differences between wary and weary. But there was one time where I called Luke Jake, I guess 4-letter white guy name that ends in K-E. And Sherry just had in the audio, did you mean Luke? And it was just the most perfectly confused she should have been. It was fantastic. Shout out to Sherry editing the show.
Yeah, you used to do that a lot with switching up Voldemort and Dumbledore, too,
all
in
the
Potterless.
Time. All the time.
So many re-records late on Sunday night while I was supposed to be sleeping for you to just go, Dumbledore, Voldemort, Dumbledore, Voldemort.
Is that what you think I sound like? Look, 3-syllable powerful wizards. Come on. So the police and the reporters are so touched by Percy's little message here that they pass around a hat to raise money for 3 tickets for the next flight to New York City. This flight has rough turbulence, and you and I were recently on a flight with lots of turbulence. Not a fun experience at all. I do not do well with turbulence, especially on the descent. I get lightheaded and I can't feel my fingers and toes and stuff. Not great for you, boy, when you get turbulence.
Yeah, you get all squirmy. Imagine if the turbulence you thought was going to be, a sign of your impending death because Zeus wanted to blast you out of the sky. Kind of like that.
Right. Slightly different stakes, but the one saving grace, they fly into LaGuardia, our new favorite airport.
Oh, yeah, our new favorite.
Because it is closest to us, and for many, many years, it was a horrible airport. But now, with all of the renovations, it's not so bad, depending on what airline you fly.
It's not so bad, depending on what airline you fly.
That should be the official slogan of LaGuardia Airport. It's not so bad, depending on what airline you fly.
LaGuardia, slightly better than Newark now.
Now, flying to LaGuardia makes sense because if they're going to the Empire State Building, that's the closest one to Midtown. Newark actually could be a good call here, though, because you'd be able to take a train straight into Penn Station, and Penn Station's right by the Empire State Building, but maybe there was only direct flights from LAX to LaGuardia. I'm just saying Newark also could have been an option here.
When we flew from LAX, we went to LaGuardia, right?
No, we went to JFK, which was
What?
rough because we landed at 11:30 p.m. and JFK is quite far.
So far. It was so sleepy. Should have been LaGuardia.
So at LaGuardia, they get into the taxi line. Percy tells Grover and Annabeth to take a cab back to Half-Blood Hill so that they can tell Chiron what's up. The factors behind this decision are 1, Percy says that I need to do the last part of this mission alone, and 2, if things go really wrong and I don't make it out of there alive, I want you to be able to tell Chiron the truth and what really happened, which is nice and also very jarring of Percy to bring up.
2 good reasons, I'd say.
So Percy gets to the Empire State Building in 30 minutes, which not bad timing. It's realistic. You could get there in 30 minutes as long as traffic wasn't super bad, and maybe they landed at a time where traffic wasn't super bad.
I've always imagined this as very late at night.
I did too.
Mainly because all flights coming from West Coast to East Coast land late at night.
Yeah, because it's going to take you 6 hours in the air and then 3 time zones. It's a 9-hour total time endeavor. It's always going to be
definitely late at night.
So Percy goes up to the guard at the front desk of the Empire State Building and asks to visit the 600th floor. Narrator Percy about the guard says, quote, he was reading a huge book with a picture of a wizard on the front. I wasn't much into fantasy, but the book must have been good because the guard took a while to look up. No such floor, kiddo. I wonder if the wizard thing was a nod to Harry Potter, maybe?
This was the one note that I made while reading this chapter, because everything else I figured I'd remember, but this I actually didn't catch the first time through reading it. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was about Harry Potter, and I couldn't tell if it was a swipe or just a nod or I don't know.
I would imagine at this time, 2005, probably a nod because Harry Potter was really big. There are definitely similarities between this book and the Harry Potter series. So I could see that being an homage to the most popular YA book at the time. And maybe if there was a rewrite, maybe Rick would pick a different book because I just get the vibe he would not get along with that author.
Wait a second. I have just strengthened my argument for why I'm pretty sure you're Percy Jackson in an alternate universe.
Why?
Percy Jackson didn't recognize the book because he's never read Harry Potter.
There we go. I'll take it.
Oh my goodness. Okay, I guess I should amend what my history with Percy Jackson is because, see, I've been dating the alternate version of Percy Jackson since 2016, and then we actually got married. Now we've been living together for a while, so I actually have a pretty big history with Percy Jackson.
You should clarify, all grown-up Percy Jackson and not 12-year-old Percy Jackson.
Yeah. Alternate universe, grown-up Percy Jackson, Michael Schubert.
Right, whose dad is the god of voices, not the ocean.
I mean, I've actually never seen any pictures of Joel bringing you home from the hospital. Maybe they're like your adoptive parents, and Poseidon is...
Joel's just the opposite of smelling Amy's the nicest person possible. So Percy says he needs an audience with Zeus, just gambling that this guy is more than immortal, and Percy is correct. At this, the guard says that Zeus just doesn't see anyone unannounced, and Percy says he thinks that Zeus will make an exception, and he lets the guard take a peek at the lightning bolt in the holder in his backpack, and the guard gets mad flustered and gives Percy a key card to place in the elevator. He tells Percy to put it into the security slot and to make sure that no one else is in the elevator with him when he does so. So Percy does, and when he enters the card, a new button for the 600th floor presents itself, and then Muzak plays, and I'm always a fan of elevator music. I first imagined the shopping song from The Sims playing when you're in the elevator.
I'm just going to let you know that the audiobook guy sang this part too.
Oh.
Further strengthening my second argument that you are the audiobook guy.
Well, the song that it actually is makes me sad. It's Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, which doesn't feel like the best choice, I guess, because you're going up into the clouds. But I thought they should have picked Knock on Wood by Amii Stewart, because in the course of it, it goes thunder, lightning. The way you love me is frightening.
I feel like the raindrops thing works. He's going up. He's the son of Poseidon, water.
But
wasn't that song in the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man as well? So
yes.
It's very of the time.
That's quite a stretch. I mean, maybe it's tailored to Percy, but I've always imagined this as Zeus's house, Zeus's domain, so I thought it should be lightning themed.
Well, but it's all their houses. It's all their domains.
But then why would the raindrop song? Is it just because...
Maybe it's personalized for Percy Jackson.
Right, but then there's way better aquatic songs. It could have been Rock Lobster by the B-52s. That would have been great. We were at the beach. But when he finally arrives at Olympus, the quote from the narrator is so good that I just want to read it verbatim and pray that I don't get hit with any sort of copyright claim. Quote, "I was standing on a narrow stone walkway in the middle of the air. Below me was Manhattan from the height of an airplane. In front of me, white marble steps wound up the spine of a cloud into the sky. My eyes followed the stairway to its end, where my brain could not accept what I saw. Look again, my brain said. We're looking, my eyes insisted. I enjoy his senses arguing with each other. It's really there. From the top of the clouds rose the decapitated peak of a mountain, its summit covered with snow. Clinging to the mountainside were dozens of multi-leveled palaces, a city of mansions, all with white columned porticos, gilded terraces, and bronze braziers glowing with 1,000 fires. Roads wound up to the peak, where the largest palace gleamed against the snow. Precariously perched gardens bloomed with olive trees and rose bushes. I could make out an open-air market filled with colorful tents, a stone amphitheater built on one side of the mountain, a hippodrome and a coliseum on the other. It was an ancient Greek city, except it wasn't in ruins. It was new and clean and colorful, the way Athens must have looked 2,500 years ago." I just thought that was so cool. Absolutely gorgeous imagery here.
Beautiful. A wonderful description. I can see it.
It reminds me of the big final level in Kingdom Hearts 3 that we were recently playing.
Mm-hmm. I want to know if it's windy up there. Is it gusty? Is he cold? I imagine they're like above atmosphere and creating their own weather kind of thing.
I would imagine that there's some magicalness that makes it not cold up there, but I still do feel like it's windy, but at the right temperature.
Like a breeze.
Yeah, a nice breeze.
All right.
Now, Percy is shocked that something so massive could be above the Empire State Building in plain sight, yet still go unnoticed. As you said earlier, the mist is some powerful stuff.
Powerful, powerful mist.
Percy describes his walk through Olympus like walking through a tourist trap, though, because people are rude to him. There's little nymphs that throw stuff at him. There's vendors trying to sell stuff to him. There are satyr musicians gathering and playing. It feels like walking through Times Square, which is the worst. So I don't know how desirable this walk is.
Clean Times Square.
I mean, that only makes it slightly better.
That makes it a little better.
Now, walking up to the palace, Percy notices that it looks like an inverse of Hades' palace. He thinks that this was an intentional choice by Hades. He's been banished from Olympus, so he's going to make inverse Olympus underneath in the underworld. And at this notion, Percy kind of feels bad for him for being banished, which I think is sweet of Percy, and it also makes me hope. I don't know if this will be a plot in a future book, but it would be really cool if, to fight off some bigger evil, Percy has to convince Hades to join the gods, and I think that that would be very cool. I do know that we are about to discuss a greater evil here. I don't think it's going to get resolved in the next chapter. I haven't read chapter 22 just yet, but I feel like to fight off the person introduced here feels like a future book thing, unless chapter 22 is really beefy, and maybe a future plot could be Percy trying to get Hades back on the good side. I think that could be very interesting.
Yeah, it made me very sad too for Hades, like that he wanted to rebuild his home exactly. My grandma lived in New Orleans her whole life, my mom's whole life, my grandma's whole life. Everybody lived in New Orleans, and her house got entirely wrecked by Katrina. She gutted it and built it back the exact same, like the exact same. And it kind of made me sad in a way too, because like, I mean, her house was old. There were elements about it that could have been made better, but from the nostalgia of it, she wanted it back the exact same. We spent months there cleaning off like all of her old stuff so that she could make it like even decorated the exact same. Then it was wild after a year, like, You walk in, it's the exact same place. It made me feel like sad in that sense, where like I'm happy for her that she got the house back exactly as she wanted to. But like there is a sadness behind it that like it was ruined and this was her only way to like get it back.
I respect that. I probably would do the same, honestly. If I had a house and it got wrecked, I would build it back exactly the same. Much like Bruce Wayne in the end of Batman Begins, when he says he's going to rebuild the house brick for brick. I do the same thing.
It even smelled the same. I don't know how. I mean, she had the same dog. And so, I mean, it smelled a little bit like dog and a little bit like the terrazzo flooring and stuff. And so.
Hey, maybe I wouldn't do that. Dogs can be smelly. So Percy approaches the throne room, which he describes as, quote, making Grand Central Terminal look like a broom closet. And I will not stand for this Grand Central Terminal slander. I love GCT. He continues, massive columns rose to a domed ceiling, which was gilded with moving constellations. And now he's just piling on because in Grand Central, they have constellations on the ceiling. So now it's cramping the style where, oh, this one's got moving constellations. Look, Zeus, we get it. You have a cool air Grand Central, okay?
I had the exact same thought.
So there are 12 thrones arranged in an inverse U, just like the cabins or just like the Organization 13 chairs in Kingdom Hearts.
Are those in a circle?
No, they're in a semicircle kind of thing. Are they in a circle? Maybe
they're in a circle, but at like different heights.
Yeah. Never mind. Scratch that. The only two occupied thrones are the head throne on the right and the one immediately to its left. And Percy approaches the gods, who are in their giant human forms, like Hades was. And it's Zeus and then Poseidon. Shouldn't Hera be next to Zeus, right? If we're going by cabin order, Poseidon was number 3. Is Poseidon just sitting in Hera's chair? Does it not matter what chair? Are there just 12 of them and it's not assigned where everyone has their own chair? I felt bad for Hera.
No, it's assigned seating.
Where is Hera seated?
I'm assuming it's based on power. And isn't like Poseidon, he's one of the big 3. He's the brother. He's like one of the originals or whatever. So I would imagine he would be powerful. And he's on his left-hand side, right?
The chair is immediately to its left. But if we're going with an inverse
he's his
U,
right-hand man.
Yeah, correct.
Well, I mean, he's part of the big 3 and he's powerful.
I just need to know where Hera is seated. I feel like Hera is being treated very poorly in all of this.
I don't remember.
Narrator Percy describes what they look like, and I was not expecting this for Zeus, but I still love it. Quote, Zeus, the Lord of the Gods, wore a dark blue pinstriped suit. He sat on a simple throne of solid platinum. He had a well-trimmed beard, marbled gray and black like a storm cloud. His face was proud and handsome and grim, his eyes rainy gray. This is very different from Hercules' big flowing blonde locks Zeus. And I like it.
I imagine his pinstripe suits has like subtle diamond dust in the white of the stripes, and so he kind of like glitters a little bit too.
I was imagining that too, like a little metallic reflectiveness in the pinstripe for sure. Narrator Percy then continues, as I got nearer to him, the air crackled and smelled of ozone.
What does ozone smell like?
What is that? Is that anything?
I wanted to ask you, what?
I don't know.
Google,
what does that mean? We're adding this to the list of very important questions that I must ask Rick Riordan when I get him on the podcast. Very important question. Hey, Uncle Rick, what does the ozone smell like?
Oh, you know what? You know how to find out. The next time we're in an airplane, just like open the window when we're up at the top and just like take a big whiff. I hear that's pretty smart.
That'll go well. I guess I have gone skydiving. I don't recall what the smell was. Yeah, I didn't take a big whiff. I was too busy screaming.
Probably all you felt was adrenaline at that point.
Now Percy goes on to describe Poseidon, and this description is perfect. I was not expecting this either, but I absolutely love it. He's basically a big beachcomber. Quote, he wore leather sandals, khaki Bermuda shorts, and a Tommy Bahama shirt, look at the brand name check, with coconuts and parrots all over it. His skin was deeply tanned, his hands scarred like an old-time fisherman's. His hair was black like mine. His face had that same brooding look that had always gotten me branded a rebel. But his eyes, sea green like mine, were surrounded by sun crinkles that told me he smiled a lot too. So I like that we just get happy beach dad Poseidon. I'm so here for this.
Oh, yeah. I love it. Like very chiseled, handsome, salt and peppered Zeus, and then like laid back beacher boy Poseidon.
I like it because going into this, I wanted Zeus to be a jerk and I wanted Poseidon to be nice. I know Poseidon usually in the myths is more of a jerk, But it would be very nice for person we are rooting for if Poseidon is good and Zeus is kind of bad. And from these descriptions, I trust chill beach dad over pinstriped, well-kempt beard dad. Uncle. Now, not only is Poseidon beachcomber, but so is his throne. It is a deep-sea fisherman's chair, and the pole holder, where a fishing pole would go, holds his trident, which is perfect. That's so good.
Also, what does a deep-sea fisherman's chair look like?
I don't know exactly. I feel like I've seen on boats. I've not gone fishing a lot, thankfully, because I've made smart choices in my life. And anytime I've seen a chair for deep-sea fishing, it's usually a more comfortable chair because I think usually you have to wait longer, so it's a little more functional and comfortable, a little like office chair meets boat. I would have to look it up, but I think by saying it's a deep sea fisherman's chair, it's supposed to show that it is more of a big chair with a arched higher back because you sit there longer waiting for the catch to happen. And then you spring to action when the line tugs. This is all me basing this off of seeing one episode of Mary-Kate and Ashley Detectives where they go on a cruise ship and people are shipping and people are fishing. Percy can sense the tension in the room. Since he can sense the tension, clearly he has sensation, as if an argument just took place. He kneels at his father's feet and he says, "Father." And Zeus, really cementing that he is a jerk, gets mad that Percy didn't address him first.
Oh, yeah. What a tool.
Poseidon tells Zeus that it's okay because he's just deferring to his father first. And Zeus then gets all, "Oh, so you do claim him as your son." Zeus is just so dramatic. And I'm glad because I went into this wanting Zeus to be a dramatic person that we don't root for once. And I think that that's very good. And I think that it has been brought forth into the character very well.
You root for him enough, but power has made him a little bit of a jerk, so you don't really root for him.
Yeah, I just had in my notes, Zeus is obnoxious, which I think is a pretty apt description.
Yeah.
Percy can't help but think that Poseidon feels distant, as if he's unsure of how to feel about Percy. But Percy actually prefers this to Poseidon being over-the-top fake, saying, "Oh, I've tried to see you," or "Oh, I've missed you," blah, blah, blah. Percy is glad that he's not trying to give him some sob story. He would rather him genuinely come off as what Percy has been feeling about him leading up to this moment. Poseidon tells Percy to tell Zeus the whole story. He does, and then he pulls out the bolt. He lays it at Zeus's feet, and Zeus then begins to ease up on Percy because clearly his story checks out. But then Zeus wonders why Ares would do this, and Poseidon says, "He is proud and impulsive. It runs in the family," which is a great line.
I am a little flabbergasted that Ares isn't getting into more trouble. That's just kind of like, oh man, that hot-headed brother of ours or cousin or whatever he is. Yeah, I know he stole our stuff and then tried to set up our kids and each other so that we'd start a war and kill all of humanity. That's silly, Ares.
Yeah, I guess they should be more upset because it doesn't appear as if they know Ares got the idea from someone else. But
even if he did, that just makes him someone who would turn on them. It just proves that he's disloyal. Like, one way he's mischievous and mean, and the other way he's disloyal and a rat.
Yeah, I agree. They should be more upset, but I guess they're more confused by the whole thing. I don't know. Maybe Zeus is just relieved that his bolt is back and he's going to save getting angry at Ares for tomorrow. But I agree with that thought. They should be more upset that Ares was trying to get them to start a war with each other based on a bunch of lying.
Yeah, Ares gets off way too easy for what he's done.
Percy insists, though, that Ares wasn't working alone. He says somebody else came up with the idea, and he goes on to describe his dreams to Poseidon and to Zeus.
Even worse, because now Ares is off the hook, but apparently knows about a bigger threat that he's been working with.
Yeah.
And they're not like, oh, damn, let's go question Ares right now. They're just like, interesting.
Do you think that maybe because Percy has defeated him in battle that they don't have to worry about him for a little bit? I don't know where he goes off to now that he has been cut in the ankle and stuff. Is it like the monsters in the underworld where he's just gone for a little bit and then he's going to come back later? I'm just trying to think of any reason why they aren't furious with Ares right now.
I would imagine no. I'm pretty sure he's fine.
Okay.
But maybe it's more of a case of they don't want to air out their dirty laundry in front of Percy, but also they are way too not shocked enough about this and way too like calm and, oh, that's silly Ares working with some larger force that's scary and wants to kill us all. That silly little sitcom character.
So after Percy describes his dreams, Zeus thinks that Percy is accusing Hades, and Percy says no. Something more powerful and evil is stirring down there, something even older than the gods.
They like jumped on the, oh, you're accusing Hades? We're really mad at him. It's like, no, I've already confirmed that it was Ares, actually. Be really mad at him instead. I don't like Ares.
You shouldn't. He's a
god
bad
of
dude.
war.
Now, once Percy said this, if you have been listening to the Newest Olympian, you will hear that in the last episode, I had no sort of guess as to who was behind it. And I basically exactly described who it was without putting forth a guess. Quite embarrassing. But once he said something even older than the gods, I closed my book and said, damn it, because I knew it was Kronos. I just didn't think that Kronos was a potential option because I thought he was dead and I thought that his remains were scattered across Tartarus. I forgot that the remains were scattered across Tartarus specifically because they kept talking about something in Tartarus, something in Tartarus. I should have picked up on this. I know you picked up on this and you are very smart. Look at you. Do a lap around the studio. You predicted it.
And I texted Johnny immediately so I'd have receipts. I'm like, this is the chapter I'm on. This is when I figured it out. It's like chapter 2, Johnny. I'm a genius.
It was not chapter 2.
No, it was not chapter 2.
I guessed very early on that Ares was behind it with no sort of hint at all. That was just complete shot in the dark.
But when I was rereading The Lightning Thief again from chapter 1, literally page 4, they're already talking about who Kronos is. And like Chiron gives the whole story about Kronos.
I know. And I think I might have even in the episode with Steven said, I bet it's someone whose name got mentioned like once and I'm just forgetting it. It's ridiculous how close I got
so close
to getting it without actually guessing. I was just too excited to finish the recording with Steven and then immediately read the next chapter that I wasn't like thinking critically about who it could be. I just wanted to get it over with so that I could read the next chapter because these books are so good and it's so hard to stop reading them in between recordings. It is so tough.
I'm really impressed that your parents are following along. Hi, Barb and Joel.
Hi, Barb and Joel.
I'm really impressed that they are like reading chapter by chapter with you because like I got to wherever you were within like 5 minutes and was like, nope, we're going all the way now.
So at this point, I knew it was definitely going to be Kronos, but it takes them a little bit longer to say it. But once they do, narrator Percy says the following, quote, Poseidon and Zeus looked at each other. They had a quick, intense discussion in ancient Greek. I only caught one word, father. And then I just wrote in my notes, ugh.
I think that like leading up to this, you were kind of telling me your predictions and stuff. And you were just dancing on the edge of saying exactly what it was. I just went, okay, and walked into the other room.
It's funny with this, and if anyone listened to Potterless, I was very wrong about guessing who the bad guy in the fourth book was. I don't do well when the culprit is someone that we have been told earlier in the book is dead, and then the reveal is, just kidding, they're not dead.
No one's ever dead.
I'm too trusting of narrators, I guess, that when they tell me something, I just go, oh, okay, this person is not a suspect because they are dead. And I think I mentally did that with Kronos and but you know what? It probably made for a really good episode of the podcast. So it's all good. I got my good prediction bragging rights with Ares and my, wow, you buffoon rights with Kronos. The perfectly balanced nature of the Newest Olympian. It's just like Thanos' knife. Good and bad guesses, perfectly balanced.
As I mentioned, my sister reads a lot of books. Growing up and even now, like she reads a lot of young adult fantasy series, like stuff that I've never even heard of. And she just breezes through a ton of stuff. And she was telling me the other day, she said, I never believe that anybody is dead in a YA novel. If somebody dies, I'm like, yeah, sure they did. And I just keep reading knowing that they're coming back. And she's like, for some of it, it's taken out some of the surprise, as we will later be proven in this chapter with Sally. I didn't for a minute think she was dead.
I didn't think she was dead from the moment, but I'm now going to run with this and try to make a prediction that'll age very well. I don't know what book, but I think Thalia is coming back. I don't know how they're going to get her out of the tree, but she's coming back. I'm just going to lay it out there. I have no idea, but I just want to get on the train of no one's dead. Thalia's coming back. Let it be known right here. Put it in audio.
7/16 on December 13th. Location.
Thalia's not dead. They're going to get her back, baby. Also, in a recent episode of the Newest Olympian, I asked, hey, how do you pronounce Thalia/Talia? And I've never received such an even distribution of people telling me answer A or answer B. 50% of the messages said Talia. The other 50% said Thalia. One person whose name is Talia said Talia, and she spells it Thalia with a TH. However, someone pointed me to a page on the Lightning Thief fan wiki that was also written by someone named Thalia, who says, my name is pronounced Thalia, and you actually say the TH. So I have no idea.
I actually thought it was Talia.
Okay.
No, just joking.
Okay?
I'm just joking.
Well, some people said
Talia.
Some people said different things where you're putting different stresses on it. I think the audiobooks say one thing, the movies say another. I've never seen such a non-consensus answer, but the only thing I could maybe muster up from what I was reading is that the more Greek way appears to be Thalia, because apparently in Greek stuff, if it's a TH, you say the nature of it as opposed to the hard T. That's the only thing I could kind of surmise.
Well, put it on the list for Uncle Rick.
Yes, Rick Riordan, please help me. And if you are Greek and also named Talia/Thalia, hit me up. I might have to get more specific.
Very niche piece of the fandom so right hard. There.
Hello and welcome to this episode's Lightning Brief. First, if you missed the announcement in our last episode or across social media, first off, that means you might not be following us on social media, which you should be, at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. But we've got TNO merch. That is right. We've got merch for the Newest Olympian. We have a What's Good shirt. We have a My Other Pen is Riptide pen. And we have a The Newest Olympian logo sticker. They are all gorgeous. They are all fantastic. You can pre-order them right now at thenewestolympian.com/merch. And shout out to all the folks who have already pre-ordered some merch. If you're looking for something fun to do on February 3rd, something that's very fun and that you don't even need to leave your own home for, why don't you attend the Horse Digital Live Show that Adam and I are doing? On February 3rd at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, we are doing a ranking of every NBA dance team from worst to first. We're going to be talking about the names, the routines, the outfits, all of this. Whether you know basketball or not, whether you listen to Horse, my basketball podcast or not, it's going to be a fun, silly time. You can get tickets right now at bit.ly/horse2322. You can watch it live, or this ticket will also get you access to a replay, so you can watch it after the fact, or you can watch it live and then after the fact. It's going to be fun. It's going to be silly, and you don't even have to leave your couch or put on pants to enjoy some live comedic podcast entertainment. Again, that's bit.ly/horse2322. I also wanted to provide an update about the Patreon. If you go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon, you can support the show and get access to a bunch of bonus content, such as director's commentary, bonus episodes. You get access to our Discord, lots of fun stuff. One of the other perks you get is access to everything I ever posted over the 5 years of which I made Potterless and posted Patreon content. Recently, I finally updated all of those old posts so that if you join the Patreon at any tier, you will get access to all the old Potterless stuff. So if you want to hear and see and read 5 years worth of my Harry Potter-esque ramblings, you can do so by joining literally any tier at thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. And speaking of that Patreon, I want to give a shout out to our newest patrons. So shout out to our newest Ultra God patron, Justin Lux. Shout out to our newest Super God tier patrons, Lauren Eves, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Beck Bacaw. Shout out to our newest God tier patrons, Sammy Sinak, Sammy O, and Chase. And shout out to our newest Demigod tier patrons, D Smith 13UO, Caitlin Crouch, Why Not Benji, Tabitha Arment, Darren Fry, and someone that made their name Percy Weasley, the best Percy ever, which is quite a stretch. He's not even a top 5 Weasley. How could he be the best Percy ever? Blasphemy, but you're supporting the show, so I will read your name as it is written. And speaking of support, I want to thank Multitude for having us as a part of the collective. If you are looking for other shows to listen to, other podcasts, you're all caught up on TNO, you're looking for other things out there, Multitude has a lot of fantastic podcasts. And one of those podcasts is Join the Party. Join the Party is a D&D actual play podcast with incredible storytelling and collaborators who make each other laugh every single week. They welcome everyone to the table, whether you are well-versed in D&D or you have no idea what's going on. If you want a story that is very D&D heavy, you can listen to the first campaign, which is the Party campaign. It's classic Dungeons and Dragons-ing. If you don't like that, though, you could listen to the second campaign, the Join campaign, which has D&D mechanics, but it's set in a modern superhero-centric setting. So if you want to check that out, search Join the Party wherever you get your podcasts or go to jointhepartypod.com. And before we wrap up here, you're going to hear words from a few sponsors who make it possible for me to be a full-time podcaster. Some of these ads will be read by me, others of them won't. The ones that are not read by me are inserted locally, so if you live in the Cayman Islands, don't be surprised if you hear a Cayman Islands relevant ad. And once those ads are complete, we will get back to this episode of The Newest Olympian. So Zeus and Poseidon have a big grumpy argument, and Zeus storms off to purify his thunderbolt in the water of Lemnos, which instantly reminded me of a line that Prince says in the movie Purple Rain, where he says, "You must purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka."
What?
Prince, the musical artist, has a movie called Purple Rain.
Didn't know it.
And at one point, he tells a woman that she must bathe herself, she must purify herself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
Well, for starters, you have to purify yourself in the waters of Lake Minnetonka.
What?
You have to purify yourself in Lake Minnetonka.
I'm going to go shower from now on and be like, I'm going to go purify myself in the shower of Schubert.
Of Lake Schubert-Tonka. Zeus's demeanor cools a bit, and then he thanks Percy, who immediately gives credit to Grover and Annabeth, which is incredible. We've known that Percy is a team player, but right away, Zeus, the top of the gods, he says, "Thanks, man, you did a good job." And immediately he goes, "It wasn't just me, it was my two friends too." Fantastic.
And he lists last names as well, which I was like, oh, it was also Annabeth and Grover. No, it was Grover Underwood and Annabeth Chase.
Here are their names. Here are their Venmos and Cash Apps if you want to send them some thank yous. Zeus says, as a thank you, that he will spare Percy his life. He then goes on and says, "I do not trust you, Perseus Jackson. I do not like what your arrival means for the future of Olympus, but for the sake of peace in the family, I shall let you live." And Percy goes, "Thank you, sir," which is the perfect response. And then Zeus continues, "Do not presume to fly again. Do not let me find you here when I return. Otherwise you shall taste this bolt, and it shall be your last sensation," which is a wild thing to say. And if this quote from Zeus was not dramatic enough, he leaves in a flash of lightning. And if that wasn't good enough, Poseidon sighs and says, "Your uncle has always had a flair for dramatic exits. I think he would have done well as the god of theater." These books are so good.
They're so good.
Quotes like this make me like Poseidon even more. And also you can see a little bit of where Percy gets his sassy remarks from. So he's believable as Percy's dad. It's perfect. It's just great.
Mm-hmm.
Percy asks what was in the pit, and Poseidon is surprised that Percy doesn't have a guess already. And Percy guesses Kronos. This is also a theme where Percy has an idea in mind, but before saying it, he kind of asks the person, what is it? He's done this to Chiron. And I like that the Greek figures go, no, what do you think it is? I like this. They don't take the thunder away from Percy. He guesses Kronos, and when he does, the room darkens because all of the gods do this. Whenever you talk about them, they have to change the weather and stuff. Poseidon basically confirms that it's Kronos. He says, quote, "In the first war, Percy, Zeus cut our father Kronos into 1,000 pieces, just as Kronos had done to his father Uranus," which I didn't know about.
Yeah, me either.
Didn't know that was a thing at all.
Mm-hmm.
Is that like the Greek version? I know the planets are named after the Roman versions of the gods, so maybe the Roman version of this is Uranus or Uranus, if you pronounce it like a fun person. It's spelled Uranos, which feels close enough, but then also Mars and Ares are not necessarily the same.
Right.
So who's to say?
I don't know.
Neptune and Poseidon are not the same, but that's the Greek versus Roman version.
Yeah, I have no idea.
I don't either. They didn't teach me this in Latin in high school. It was a language class, not a history class.
Mm-hmm.
So Zeus cast
A
Cronus...
history class about the gods?
Or just about like Latin Roman history. We would just kind of learn a little bit of history based on what the homework assignment sentences you had to write were, but those were more about the actual people in Rome, not necessarily the mythology. It was more about the emperors themselves.
One of the things I loved about taking French classes is all of the like workbook sentences were very French. Like, I want to share my baguette. Do you have an extra baguette? How much for the croissant?
And now that all the French listeners have deleted the podcast.
Oh, no. I was very appreciative because that's what I wanted to know. Especially, can you share your baguette?
A very important thing to know. It's what I called when I lived in France, utility French, where I learned all of the numbers so I could use the metro system, all of the food stuff so I could shop at the mom and pop boulangeries and patisseries and the butcher where they didn't speak English, and also important terms in basketball so I could play pickup, and then also curse words so that I could properly trash talk in pickup basketball.
Obviously.
Utility French.
See, I learned how to read menus and street signs. That was about as far as I got.
Very important. So Poseidon continues, Zeus cast Cronus' remains into the darkest pit of Tartarus. The Titan army was scattered. Their mountain fortress on Etna destroyed. Etna destroyed. Yay, we'd love to see that. That
the insurance?
That was a healthcare joke because America's healthcare system is garbage. Isn't Aetna our provider?
Aetna is our insurance provider. And it's better than some other insurance providers that have sucked.
Yes, Aetna, if you're listening, I didn't mean it. Please continue to let me be married into my wife's insurance plan. It's really nice, and it was an unanticipated huge benefit of getting married to her.
For our 6-month anniversary, Mike's insurance card finally came in the mail. I added him to my plan. His insurance card came in the mail. It was a couple days before our 6-month anniversary, so I was like, ooh, I'm going to give this to him as like a little present. I wrapped it up. I gave it to him, and you're like, oh, yeah, thanks. And I was like, this is like pretty expensive little piece of plastic I'm giving you right now.
It's a very important rectangle that saves me a couple $100s a month. But also any politicians, if you're listening, just pass Medicare for all. My God. Poseidon continues, they're monstrous allies driven to the farthest corners of the earth, and yet Titans cannot die any more than we gods can. Would have loved to have known this earlier. Whatever is left of Cronus is still alive in some hideous way, still conscious in his eternal pain, still hungering for power. So I do feel like you can't fault me too much for not guessing this, since Poseidon is like, hey, he should be super dead. I don't know what's going on, man. He continues and says that Cronus has stirred throughout time, entering nightmares, giving people evil thoughts and ideas, but rising from the pit is just a whole nother beast. But Poseidon says they have to stop discussing it because Zeus has forbade it. Percy wants to protest this, but he realizes that Poseidon may be the only god that's actually on his side, so he doesn't push back against him. A faint smile then shows on Poseidon's lips, and he says, obedience does not come naturally to you, does it? Percy says, no, sir. And Poseidon says, I must take some blame for that, I suppose. The sea does not like to be restrained, which is a great way to phrase it. Now, Poseidon shares some really great news with Percy. He says that Hades returned Sally to her home once the helm was given. Percy wants to ask Poseidon if he will come visit, but he knows that it'll just be an absolute mess. Poseidon tells Percy that when he returns home, there will be a package waiting for him, and he will have an important choice to make. And my thought here is that this is just going to be a tiny pill container with a red pill and a blue pill, and he can either decide to continue to go down this Greek rabbit hole or just wake up in his boring office job. Poseidon says some really nice things about Sally, though. He says, your mother is a queen among men. And he says this wistfully. I had not met such a mortal woman in 1,000 years. Still, I am sorry you were born, child. I have brought you a hero's fate, and a hero's fate is never happy. It is never anything but tragic. And Percy, obviously and understandably, is very hurt by this because basically his dad is saying, I'm sorry you were born, which sucks to hear.
Poseidon's so nice and so cruel at the same time. Your mother's a queen amongst mortals, but also I run around sleeping with a lot of mortals. Like, you got lots of siblings, man.
But she was the best
one. She was the best, but also you shouldn't have been born.
Right.
I never should have done it. But also, all of us cheat on all of our relationships with lots and lots of mortals and take advantage of our powers with them. Yeah. I try not to think about it too hard, that all the demigods exist because all of the gods keep cheating on their significant others.
Right. Or they're just sleeping around if they are not married to someone else.
Yeah.
The other thing that I have to not keep in mind, someone at one point, I've mentioned on the pod that I think if Percy and Annabeth got together, it would be very cute. And someone was like, they're kind of cousins. First off, I have no idea how cousins work because I don't have any first cousins. So in my eye, it's all just Greek to me. But also, if you've ever read any Greek mythology, it's all incest, baby, all over the place. So we're just going to, Percy and Annabeth, if they get together, we're just not going to think too hard. Now, Percy says to Poseidon, I don't mind, father, even though he is very crushed. But Poseidon, just in the ultimate not reading the room moment, says, perhaps not yet. But you will eventually. It was an unforgivable mistake on my part. Just read the room, guy. Well, what are you doing? Percy's 12. No. Awful. Percy says, okay, well, I'll just leave and never bother you again. And as he's leaving, Poseidon stops him. And with pride in his eyes, he tells him that he did well and that no matter what else he does, Percy is his and he is the true son of a sea god. And at least he ends it on a good note, even though you had the little bit of the end where you said, sorry you were born, you shouldn't have been born, what a big mistake having you was. At least you stuck the landing there.
I think even as much as we like Poseidon, his character makes it so obvious how far above us he is in the fact that he just says these things and doesn't care about a mortal's emotions, because a mortal, what is 100 years, 80 years, whatever it is to his infinite amount of time, right? And so it's I think it's a really interesting character. We like him, we really like him, but also he makes it obvious that he is so far above all of the mortals.
And I think that just speaks to Rick Riordan's ability to make a believable god father character.
Yeah.
I think it's good that he's complex and he's not perfect. It would honestly be weird and jarring and I think a disservice to the story if Poseidon was just incredibly likable.
Right.
If he was just so nice and cheery and chipper, you would just wonder, why hasn't he been around? Why is he a bit absent from Percy's life? Why has he been so distant? Why is he distant even now? I think it's really nice to have the character, just like you're saying. He seems nice, but he's not perfectly nice. And part of him is just so far removed from mortal life that he doesn't realize how harsh some of the things he's saying can be interpreted and how harshly some of his actions come across and the consequences and the repercussions and all that kind of stuff.
Or he just doesn't care. He operates on a different plane.
Exactly. And I think it makes him believable. I think him being not necessarily a perfect dad makes him more accurate to what he's supposed to be in the story.
Oh, it's a great representation of a Greek god. Just like Zeus is really suave and cool, and we like him, but we don't really like him. And Poseidon's really down to earth and cool, but also not down to earth because he's a god.
Right. Yeah. With Zeus, Percy did Zeus a huge favor, and the best he could muster up was, I won't kill you, and also don't you dare fly again, otherwise I will kill you. Thanks, Zeus. Percy then walks out of Olympus. While he does so, everyone is showing reverence to him, kneeling as if he's some sort of figure to respect. And when he gets back in Manhattan, Percy takes a cab home. He is greeted by Sally, who is happy to see him, and she's crying. Percy tears up. I'm crying. Everyone's crying. Teardrops on my paperback.
I just imagine that all those minor gods and everybody in the streets were eavesdropping on the whole conversation, and that's why they're now all reverent and bowing. It's how are they going to know? But I guess they were just listening in. I don't know.
I would imagine that big empty throne room probably echoes really well, so everyone probably heard it. Sally relays to Percy that she just appeared in the apartment with no memory of anything past the Minotaur situation. And Smelly Gabe made her go to work because she, quote, has a month of salary to make up. Hate Smelly Gabe. Didn't think I could hate him more. He continues to impress me with his awfulness. She hadn't heard the news. Percy then gives his version of the whole story. And then Smelly Gabe interrupts from the other room asking if the meatloaf is ready. Sally says that he is furious about the free appliances thing, but then she smirks and tells Percy just to not make him any angrier. Narrator Percy says, in the month I'd been gone, the apartment had turned into Gabe Land, which is the worst theme park imaginable. Garbage was ankle deep on the carpet. The sofa had been reupholstered in beer cans. Incredible turn of phrase. Dirty socks and underwear hung off the lampshades. Now, Kelly, you are someone that likes to keep our apartment clean. You are very good at it. I appreciate all of what you do for it. Did this make your skin crawl when you read this?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on. When Smelly Gabe sees Percy, he's absolutely furious. But Sally tries to keep things cool, but it doesn't work. He raises his hand, and then it causes Sally to flinch. And at this moment, Percy realizes that at some point, Smelly Gabe must have hit her. Doesn't know if it was in the past, doesn't know if he's still doing it, but this is just the last straw for Percy. And I was already well past the last straw, but really not loving Smelly Gabe at all. Again, didn't think he could get worse. He got significantly worse here.
So this part for me was like not a big letdown, but I had this prediction from the beginning that Smelly Gabe, he was smelly, he's rude, he's coarse, but like Sally seems to kind of like love him in the sense that you love a guard dog, right? Like tolerate him in the sense that you tolerate a guard dog or something like that. And you find out that Sally's only with him because he's so densely mortal that he like wards off the monsters with his scent. I thought it was going to be something more nuanced, like Poseidon had left Gabe and with Sally to protect Percy, and that Gabe was actually like some half demon, half wolf, half human thing.
This
and
is
that,
where I
like,
was thinking
that's
things
what
would
I
go
thought
as
was
well,
going to
yeah.
happen. And like then when you're learning now that he hits Sally and that he's treating her so awfully, and that now that like Percy's back, and it's like very obvious that Percy's a demigod and he's not like, oh yeah, and I'm your guard dog. Like now I'm just like, oh man, I hate Gabe. Before I was just thinking like he's a wet, smelly, untrained dog. Now I'm like, oh no, he's just like the worst form of human.
Right. I understand that for a middle grade book, a YA book, you need to have some sort of evil stepmother type character. You see it in a lot of YA books. So I get that you need someone to hate. But I would find it funny if instead of Smelly Gabe just being a terrible person and that being the justification of he's just the most mortal, I think it would be funny if that just meant the stepdad was the most basic human. Like he was just exceedingly boring and just was the most plain. Yeah, but I mean, Gabe goes beyond that. I'm just imagining someone who's, I don't know, thinks that bell peppers are spicy and loves to watch reality TV shows and, you know, wears khakis from the Gap. I don't know, just like the most like boring stepdaddy, polo buttoned all the way up. Like, I think that would be very fun, but you need some sort of villain for Percy to hate against, so I get it.
Right. And also, it shows the sacrifice of what Sally did. Sally was
100%.
with this person that, you know, wasn't just boring her, but was actually like physically, verbally, emotionally very abusive to her. And so I think it's more of a show of Sally's strength and Sally's love for Percy. But I agree with you that it would have been funny if he was very, very basic.
Yeah. So Percy gets mad and approaches Smelly Gabe with Riptide in pen form. And Smelly Gabe says, "What, punk? You're gonna write on me?" Which is unfortunately hilarious. But then one of the poker friends, Eddie, springs to Percy's defense. I think Eddie is the super in the building. He says, "Oh, come on, he's just a kid. I might like Eddie," which is wild. But Sally just whisks Percy up to his room, and the package is there. It's the same box that Percy sent the head in to the gods, but then in black marker, it has the address of the apartment that they're in, and it says return to sender. That's not how return to sender works, but okay, gods. Return to sender, you just write that on the thing, and then if someone has a return address in the top left, it sends it back to that address. Percy didn't have an address there, so you could have, I don't know, this is just not how return to sender works.
Aside on you liking Eddie now, I would say Eddie is just as bad.
Oh, I mean,
He's
Eddie's
complicit.
the bare minimum here. Not necessarily good, but at least Eddie's not the worst of the poker bros, I guess.
Eddie's the super, and he sees how horrible Smelly Gabe is to his kid. He should call Child Protective Services.
I mean, I don't know. You should do something. Yes. I'm not saying this is not a cosign of Eddie. I'm just saying if you have to pick which of the poker bros is the best, Eddie has skyrocketed into first place.
He's tripped over the bar that Smelly Gabe has placed on the floor.
So Percy recognizes what Poseidon meant by a choice. It is basically, do you use this head of Medusa or not? So Percy looks at Sally and says, "Mom, do you want Gabe gone?" And Sally says, "Percy, it's not that simple. And Percy interrupts her saying, "Mom, just tell me, that jerk has been hitting you. Do you want him gone or not?" And then she hesitates and she says, yes, Percy, I do. And I'm trying to get up my courage to tell him, but you can't do this for me. You can't solve my problems. And Percy is a bit frustrated because he could solve her problem. He wants to just rip the package open and put it right down on the table and end this once and for all. And the way he phrases this, he says, I wanted to slice that package open, plop it on the poker table, and take out what was inside. The way Percy ends this description, he says, I could start my very own statue garden right there in the living room. Wow. Action hero Percy is very good. And I, for a second, was thinking, yeah, dude, do it. But then Percy, because he's nice, I guess, wonders if he could send anyone to Asphodel, even Smelly Gabe. So Percy tries to convince Sally that she doesn't need Smelly Gabe around to protect him anymore. She should go to college, get her degree, meet a guy, finish her novel. And Sally replies that Percy sounds just like his father, who always just wanted to solve all of her problems. And I do this sometimes to you, unfortunately, too. You'll be venting to me about something and I try to go into problem solver mode, and that is not always the best thing. So apologies there. But again, I could see myself in Percy here.
Yes, but I also think that, so this whole scene, I think, was so beautifully done because it is on Sally. Like, even if Percy saved her from this situation, Sally's the one who needs to do it to really come out of this situation. And I think this scene was very well done.
It's fantastic. Sally says, if my life is going to mean anything, I have to live it myself. I can't let a god or my son take care of me. She says that she has to find the courage on her own. And then I was thinking, oh, this is way better. Her telling off Smelly Gabe is so much better. And Percy says, I'll leave the box if he threatens you. And then she looks a bit shocked, but she nods. And then she asks where Percy will go. He says Half-Blood Hill. She asks for the summer or forever. And then he says, I guess that depends. They lock eyes and then they sense an agreement that they will see how things stand at the end of the summer. I'm guessing this will be, let's see how book 2 goes. And we'll revisit this at the end of book 2.
Well, I interpret it as, let's see if Gabe's still here and I can come home. Also, I think Percy needs to be way more explicit about what's in the box. Like, your mom might think, like, oh, there's a weapon in there. Like, what if she pulls it out later, not realizing it's actually Medusa's head?
I was imagining that when Percy told her the whole story, he included the part where he sent a decapitated head with best wishes written as the signature line to the gods.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
You're 12 years old. You're totally going to brag about that. Come on. That's way too cool not to share with your mom. Sally kisses his forehead and then says, you'll be a hero, Percy. You'll be the greatest of all. Percy heads out. Smelly Gabe starts talking some smack, which makes Percy doubt his decision just a smidge. And then Smelly Gabe asks about the meatloaf. And Sally says, the meatloaf is coming right up, dear. Meatloaf surprise. And then she looks at Percy and winks. Is she going to do it like right now? I was very intrigued.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we see a little bit more strength in Sally, and you're like, is she about to poison him with the meatloaf?
Right. Is the meatloaf people? So the final quote from narrator Percy to end this chapter, the last thing I saw as the door swung closed was my mother staring at Gabe as if she were contemplating how he would look as a garden statue. I did not think this was going to be immediate decision from Sally. I thought she was going to sleep on it and wonder about whether or not to do it, but she might be rocking the Medusa method right now, and I'm very excited to see what Sally does here if she is going to do it, but that was the end of the chapter.
Right. I imagine that Sally isn't going to kill him right away, but I also imagine that Gabe is not going to take Sally leaving with his source of income and food and apartment very well. So that's what it's going to come down to.
I do feel like telling him off isn't going to work. She is probably going to have to use the head. We will see if it comes to that, I guess, in the next chapter or in a future book. But it's the end of this chapter. That's the end of this episode of The Newest Olympian. Kelly, thank you so much for being my guest.
You're welcome.
Now, normally I let people promote stuff here, things they're working on, but you usually go a slightly different route and send some sort of message or tell people to support puppies.
I support kittens.
So, Kelly, if there's anything you would like to say to the people listening, now is your time.
All right, listeners, eat lots of jelly beans, pet lots of kittens, and as always, listen to BTS. Woo!
Is that your sign off?
That's my sign off. Woo!
If you want to see Kelly tweet about things related to BTS, you can follow her on Twitter at @VoteForMeKellyB.
Yes. It's mostly BTS and also some kittens. And I don't know. Maybe I need to talk about candy now too, because that's my third thing I'm promoting apparently.
Well, Kelly, thank you for joining. Listeners, thank you for listening. And until the next episode, I'll see you later. Hey, thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Newest Olympian. This podcast is created, hosted, and produced by me, Mike Schubert. I also run the website and the social media. Our editor is Sherry Guo. The music is by Bettina Campamanes and Brandon Grugel, and the art is by Jessica E. Boyd. If you want to get some of that sweet TNO merch, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/merch. If you want to support us on Patreon, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/Patreon. If you want to find us on social media, we're at Newest Olympian on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Facebook's got some groups where you can have discussions. So does the patron-only Discord. Lots of fun communities out there. And if you want to learn what chapters we are covering in future episodes, you can go to thenewestolympian.com/about. I want to give a huge thanks to our producer-level patrons: Lauda Bartova, Kelsey Gillespie, The Damn Steam Nuggets, Emma Cooey, Vicky Garcia, Ellie Hoskovchova, Veronica Bartova, Natanya Page, Haley Hastings, Robin Garcia, Frida Vikstrom, Megan Moon, Tough Bayfong, Moo Productions, Don't Call Me Nymphadora, Olivia Y, Craig McRoberts, Griffin Dork, Taylor Payne, Giselle Salvador, Minka Dreesen, Can't I See We Brain, Matt Barger, Peter Johnson the Twin, Sabrina Balsiger, Mooney B, Boney Pony, Harlan Christ, Heather McMillan, Casey Canales, Polly Burridge, Nikki Harris, Tatiana Schmidt, Sandra Rose, Bridget Lowry, Aidan Lippold, Josh Sayer, Percy Blue, Josh Wilkie, Martin Anvik, Abby Ryan, Josh Clements, Angela MF, Mary Baumgartner, Shannon Yvonne Aguilar, Wise Girl, Alpacas Are Hope, Finn TZ, Ribbon Monstrosity, Samantha McNamara, Tate Sasson, Emil Oscar Thomason, Roxas 1912, Rafaela, Ashton Gabrielson, Cara Maren, Marco Redhouse, Falcon, Joey James, Christopher William Boucher, and Justin Lux. If you want to help out the show in a non-monetary way, you can tell someone about the show. If you think of someone who would love this podcast, you know someone who loves Percy Jackson or someone who has been waiting for some excuse to finally read the Percy Jackson books, why don't you tell them about the Newest Olympian? It's a fun digital book club. It's a good time. Why don't you pass along that podcast recommendation to them? Or you can talk about the podcast on social media or leave us a rating and review somewhere. All of these things really do help. And if you do any of them, I would be very appreciative. But I'm just so appreciative that you listened to this episode. And I hope you tune in to our next episode where we are back with Kelly Beckman Schubert to talk about the final chapter of The Lightning Thief, which is wild. But until then, I'll see you later. Hey, hello, it's me, ASMR Mike. Everyone seemed to enjoy my words of motivation in the last ASMR Mike segment, so this time around, I was thinking I could just share some advice. So I live in New York City, and it has been very cold recently. It is January. We had some temperatures below 20 degrees Fahrenheit, which is, in fact, very cold. And something that has really helped me that I would highly recommend all of you, doesn't have to be a very expensive purchase, but getting some sort of base layer long john thing that you can wear under your pants has gone so far for me. I got a pair online for like $20, not a whole lot, but the amount of warmth that they've given my legs and thus comfort during extended walking times, because I still walk a lot in the city even though it's really cold, that's been really helpful. So I highly recommend you get a pair of those. Layers are just so key. And if you can wear a base layer underneath your pair of pants, jeans, or whatever you're rocking, that can go a long way in keeping you warm. So if you are braving the streets and it's cold and windy outside, it can help you out. That is my piece of advice, and I just hope you have a good rest of your day.